Alright, continuing with Illustrator and making patterns, we're going to start simple and get more complicated as we go along. So we're going to make some radial patterns, and just like a previous video, which I had a link to back there, we're going to start with just like some simple black and white shapes. So I have these, and I'm going to go to the rotate tool, which is this right here. Now with the rotate tool, what's really important here is I'm going to hold down Alt and click to establish where I want the middle of my circle to be. So Alt and click, and then right here you're going to type 360 and then a slash. So 360 means I'm going to be spinning this in a circle. The slash is then how many times I'm going to repeat it. I want to repeat this 10 times. What's really important now is I'm going to hit the word copy and not OK. Don't hit OK. Hit copy. So that made a copy, and I'm going to just hit Control D to keep copying until I come all the way back around. So, a simple radial pattern, pretty easy there. Once you know where that rotate tool is and how it works, that one's not complicated at all, and really just comes down to how complex of something you give it. So here's something a little bit different. Up here at the top, I just clicked on that different width profile. That's just an interesting way to give your lines some different variety and weight sometimes. I just did it because I thought it was looking a little boring. Same deal though, gonna select all this, get my rotate tool, hold Alt and click to establish my center, type 360 slash however many times I want to repeat it, and then hit copy. This time I only repeated it 8 times. And there you go, a simple radial pattern. This is like how you can easily make snowflakes. We're going to get into some other things with mandalas, but you could certainly make an easier one doing this way. Of course, object pattern make, like we talked about last time, is something you can do with these. You can make a pattern of something that is a pattern. That is totally fine. As you can see, this makes some really cool negative space between each of these. And as always, I can go in there and change my different modes, just like we did in the previous video. So, simple radial pattern, there you go. Let's go for a complex radial pattern. I'm going to start by using the polygon tool. So it's within the rectangle tool by default. We're going to get that polygon tool, and you just click once to get this menu. You're going to decide how complicated you want to go and make a 10-sided polygon and flip it so that it's an outline. And now I'm going to make lines to connect everything basically. So I get my pen tool, and I'm just going to connect side to side, corner to corner until I've filled up this whole thing, like so. And this is kind of weird. I'm going to put this in Live Paint, actually. I'm going to select all that, put it in Live Paint. You guys know how to do this. Click away from it. And then I'm going to hit K for my paint bucket, and I'm going to paint this bottom triangle red. Doesn't really matter what color it is. And then I'm going to select it and go to Object Expand. This is going to let me turn this into just a bunch of triangles, basically. So now what I can do is get my direct select tool and yank that red triangle out so it's separate. Now it looks like it's separate, however, for some reason, like Live Paint likes to group stuff, so as you'll see, it's like still stuck to this. Easy solution, I'll just cut it and paste it, and then it's good. Alright, I'm going to do the exact same thing here again. I'm going to get my pen tool, split this triangle right down the middle in half, and do the same thing with Live Paint and everything once again. So pen tool, find the middle of this, split it right down the middle, select all of it, then go to Object, Live Paint, Make, click away from it, hit K for my paint bucket, paint that another color, and then expand it out, Object, Expand, and say OK, click away from it, get my triangle. I'm just going to delete everything I don't need here. I don't even have to worry about cutting anything. And there we go, just plain deleted those. Okay, so I've got this triangle, and I'm going to turn it into an outline mode. I'm going to draw some patterns on here. I'm just going to use the pencil tool, and I'm just kind of freehanding some sort of henna-inspired patterns here. Going to speed this up because I was being kind of picky here, even though this is just supposed to be a quick demonstration. That tends to happen sometimes. Alright, so just drawing a pattern, it does not matter if my pattern goes past these lines, and you'll see why in just a second here. I'm going to click on the triangle, right-click on it, and say Arrange, and then Bring to Front. That's really important for me to do this next thing, which is select all of it, right-click again, and say Make Clipping Mask. That's going to crop all that stuff that was hanging off the edges. There we go. Now I've got this, I'm once again going to select it, right-click, go to Transform, and then Reflect. Transform Reflect is going to let me make a mirror copy, so make sure you hit copy and not OK, just like the last time we did something like that. And now that I've got a mirror image, I can put them together like so. So now that I've got this, I can take this pattern and flip it around to make my entire radial pattern. So I'm actually going to make a copy of it. That's always a good habit to get into, just in case something messes up. And shove this down here. And let's just use that exact tool that we just used before. I'm trying to group this. For some reason I had to go to Object Group, or I could have just done Control G. Anyway, I'm going to click on this, going to get my Rotate tool, hold Alt, click right on that point of the triangle, and I know that I had a 10-sided shape, so I can do 360 over 10, hit Copy, and do Control D to fill up the whole thing, just like we did before. And here's basically the same steps, like not the same steps, the same method that we just used for that other one, but we just made it with a much more complicated original thing to repeat. Alright, so there's a more complex radial pattern. I'm going to give you guys a couple of little tools here to kind of help out with our next part here. And so we got simple, we got complex. Now let's just talk about making a pattern brush. So pattern brush is really easy. This is, like I said, just like a little tool. I'm just going to draw something, just a little blob here. Again, just keeping it simple. Remember, anything you're seeing me do here, you can do with colors and shapes. I'm just keeping it simple. Using that width profile again to give it a little bit more definition. This looks like a sad avocado right now. Let's go in there and just kind of spice it up a little bit. Some more extra blobs. Okay, so I've got this. I'm just going to select it. I'm going to go over to my brushes menu over here on the right, click on that, and then click on this little menu thing here, and we're going to say New Brush. So once I say New Brush, this comes up. We're going to select Pattern Brush, and we're going to say OK. And there's this menu here with all sorts of stuff that we're just not going to mess with, except for one thing, and that is how it treats the corners. So I'm going to click on this, the outer corner tile menu, and I'm just going to, usually I switch like auto between. You can just decide what you like, how it looks, and you'll see how that affects it in just a second here. So now that I've done that, I can get my paintbrush tool, go select that pattern I just made from that palette, and there it is. There's that brush I just created. Alright, let me do that again with a slightly more simple one so you can really get the idea of what's going on with this. So made a shape, and here it is, selected, new brush, pattern brush. I'm going to change the corner to auto between, say OK, and now that saves to my brushes menu, and I can get that paintbrush and just make that repeat over and over. Pretty cool. Alright, one last little tool here. This is something that's kind of frustrating that for some reason in InDesign this is like an easy thing to do by default, but Illustrator you gotta take some extra steps, and that is just plain making a dotted line. So I'm gonna show you how to make just a dotted line, as that says. And so start off by just making a line. I'm just gonna get my pen tool, make sure I've got my stroke color on, and just make a line. Alright, and to make this a dotted line, I'm gonna go into my stroke menu. If you don't see all these options, we're gonna just click that little menu, and you can say show options if you don't see all that. And we're gonna click on dashed line, which is literally dashes right now. We're gonna set the dash to 0 and the gap to just anything. I'm just gonna set 10 point right now. And the critical thing here is set the cap to that middle one that's circled right there, and that's gonna make it round. So the weight is how big the circles are, the gap is how far apart they are from each other. So if I turn this up, obviously I would then also need to turn up the gap if I want them further apart and not touching each other. So yeah, that's how you make a dotted line. It's, like I said, a little bit more complicated than it should be, especially considering that InDesign just has that as an option. So now imagine taking just a dotted line, those pattern brushes, and applying them to something like the complex radial pattern. What would that look like? Something like this, where I've taken many custom brushes and done many different patterns, and if I zoom in here you can see just how complicated some of these patterns that I've made have gotten here. Again, just by using custom brushes and the pencil tool and dotted lines. There's where you can see my custom brushes, and dotted lines are something I made on my own. So experiment with this, see what you like the looks of, look up some inspiration for different patterns that you can make, and know that you can make any of them in Illustrator.